The very latest from around the world and here at home now from the ITV News at 10.
It has been one of our fastest growing and most vibrant industries.
No wages! No pages! No contracts! No actors! No wages!
But today, the full impact of the international Hollywood actors strike was beginning to hit home.
Streaming has changed the game so much, and our contracts have never caught up with that.
In 2019, the entertainment industry was worth more than £12 billion to the UK economy. So the key question tonight, what will the impact be here? Also on News at 10. More strike misery as baggage handlers agree to walk out of Gatwick during peak holiday season. Pulling your own teeth out using putty to fill gaps. The horrifying stories of those struggling to find an NHS dentist. Now the US wilts in a heatwave with the temperature in California's Death Valley predicted to top 55 degrees on Sunday. And the pop star Rita Ora on the struggle to control her own musical destiny.
Now more than ever, you've got lots of pop stars that come from, refugee immigrant families. And I'm lucky and happy now that there's loads of us to really sort of set the tone.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. On the face of it, the Hollywood writers and now actors strike feels like a faraway response to a distant problem. After all, we have strikes enough of our own to worry about. But there is a pretty big and simple issue here. The film and TV industry was worth a whopping £12.5 billion to the UK economy in 2019 and has been one of our fastest growing and most vibrant industries. A great many jobs here depend on it. We saw the impact immediately last night as the stars of big new blockbuster films walked out of premieres and off film sets. Today, we were starting to get a sense of how widespread that impact might be. As just one example, filming on the Ariana Grande film Wicked, currently taking place in the UK, has now ground to a halt.
As Hollywood halts production, its stars begin to march. The Actors Union, SAG-AFTRA, joining writers in striking against contracts they believe to be unfair.
I'm here because I'm in the SAG-AFTRA union. I'm also here because of the Writers Union, and the corp agrees.
I think that we're standing at a crossroads that is a part of a seismic sea change that's been happening for quite some time.
99.9% of the people that I'm fighting for right now are working class people. They are the ones that are being squeezed out.
It's the industry's biggest shutdown, 160,000 performers not working after failing to agree a deal with the world's major content creators. The Screen Actors Guild is trying to ensure good living wages for its members, particularly those making movies or television shows for streamers. Actors are also seeking assurances that artificial intelligence won't be used to create digital replicas without payment or approval. And the union is concerned with self-taped auditions, which have flourished since COVID, forcing actors to take on audition costs rather than producers.
No contract!
The walkout means the cameras aren't rolling on set anymore.
The strikes in the US are having an impact on filming here too. I'm in Ivinghoe in Buckinghamshire, where they were shooting the new Wicked film, but that's been put on pause. Its star Ariana Grande posted on social media about the shutdown, showcasing her support for the strike. The film is due out next November, but with filming delays, that date could be pushed back.
Who is he?
The Gladiator sequel and the next instalment of Avatar are just a few of the other big-budget blockbusters that might see releases delayed. With billions of pounds spent every year shooting movies in the UK, our Actors Union believes will be affected by the stateside strikes.
In the short term, there will be a slowing of work. The overwhelming majority of artists are on British contracts, so you won't see an immediate complete stoppage over here. However, if the dispute deepens, if the producers refuse to engage properly, The number of permissions for SAG-AFTRA members to come over to the United Kingdom to work will reduce.
Actors working on both sides of the Atlantic believe things need to be resolved as soon as possible.
Everyone's only just back in the cinema. If everyone's next year is ready to go and there's nothing to watch, that's going to be a terrible thing. So we need to just talk sensibly and get it all sorted out.
This is just the first day, but with no deal on the horizon, it could be months before directors call action once again.
And Rishi is here to talk about all this. Look, as we've been saying at the top of this programme, this is a massive, massive industry for the UK. Lots of people's jobs depend on it. A bit of a crossroads, really, for the whole industry.
It really feels that way. It's the first time we've had a joint writers and actors strike for 60 years, and a few of the celebrities on the picket line talking about how needed it was because of the advancements in artificial intelligence and the dominance that streamers now have over the industry. So this is their chance to make sure that they're treated fairly. Given that we've had extensions in the past and no agreement's been found, it appears that the unions aren't closer to getting either side to budge, and the big studios will start to feel the pressure when they look at what's coming up in the next few months or the next few years, and nothing is close to being finished when it comes to filming. It's important to note that big actors who work both in the UK and in the US on separate contracts, on the SAG agreement in the US, on the equity one here, they're not being discouraged from taking on work in the UK. It's a separate agreement and it's not under dispute. That's good for our film and TV industry, where production can continue on British projects, both in the present and in the future.
OK, Rishi, that's very good. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the Hollywood actors' strike is indeed likely to have far-reaching effects for many people in the UK, but the strike-weary British public has perhaps more pressing matters to think about tonight. Thousands of people learned today that the summer holiday they've been looking forward to for so long might now be under threat. 8 days of strikes have been called by 1,000 baggage handlers and other staff at Gatwick Airport, one of the UK's busiest holiday hubs. They will hit 2 of the summer's peak holiday weekends, threatening both outbound and return journeys.
Coming down the runway at Gatwick, another summer of holiday disruption. Baggage handlers at Britain's second largest airport have voted overwhelmingly to strike over pay.
Members tell us every week they're having to survive off overtime. They get to the end of the month, they don't have enough salary to meet bills that are coming in. They simply cannot afford to sustain themselves on the low wages that are being paid by these ground handling companies.
Workers at 4 ground handling firms plan to walk out. Unite says they're paid £12 an hour on average and is seeking pay rises of up to 24%. DHL, which provides services to EasyJet, is one of the companies affected. Of the 1,000 Unite members who were balloted, 80% voted, and of those, 97% voted to strike. 8 days of strike action have been announced at the peak of the summer getaway period. As many as 1.7 million passengers are due to pass through Gatwick on these dates. EasyJet accounts for the lion's share of flights during the strike period, operating 2,300 departures. That's more than BA, TUI, Vueling and Ryanair put together. Tonight, the airlines told us they're disappointed by the results of the ballots, but they will continue to engage with the union in the hope of finding a settlement. Gatwick Airport says it will engage with the airlines to ensure that as many flights depart from Gatwick as possible, but it is not disputing the union's claim that disruption as it stands is inevitable. Olu Adeshanu's family is due to fly back to Gatwick from Turkey with EasyJet during the strike. He's hoping that common ground can be found in the coming weeks. His sympathy is with the workers.
It's important that people are paid an appropriate and a fair wage for the work that they do. And so the disappointment is more with the sort of large companies.
Last year, more than 1 in 3 flights to and from the UK were delayed as airlines who'd made redundancies during the pandemic struggled with shortages of staff.
I think this summer could be as bad as last year, if not worse.
This aviation expert says strikes are the issue this year, and ground staff at Gatwick aren't the only workers striking.
The air traffic control strikes are proving really disruptive. Already this year we've seen thousands of flight cancellations, slightly more than last year, because of restrictions, especially over France.
At Gatwick, Unite is seeking a very large pay rise. The union calculates that airlines cannot replace their members, can afford to pay, and won't want to put passengers through the rigmarole of last summer. The union may have calculated wrong. Joel Hills, ITV News at Gatwick.
A damning report into the current state of NHS dentistry says it's in such a bad state, some desperate people have even been reduced to pulling out their own teeth. And with many families simply unable to access NHS dental treatment at all, the health of children's teeth is also under threat. All this is before the knock-on health effects of disrupted dental care is brought into consideration. The Health and Social Care Committee says such pain and distress is totally unacceptable in the 21st century and urgent reform is needed.
Every child in the UK is entitled to free dental care on the NHS, but a lack of access means some have never even been to the dentist. So at this school in Luton, pupils are having a check-up with the Dental Wellness Trust to stop tooth decay before it's too late.
It all starts with prevention. So we know every year in England, 48,000 children go into hospital to have their rotten teeth removed under general anaesthetic. That's a huge number considering there is an NHS.
A survey carried out in March shows a dental service in crisis, with 22% of Britons currently not registered with a dentist, while 27% of people haven't seen a dentist in the last 2 years. Most shockingly, 10% have resorted to DIY dentistry, performing procedures on themselves.
When you'd be looking to fill any gap that might be missing, it takes a while to obviously get that right. It's not the easiest thing to do.
Wesley in Barnstable lost his front teeth in a childhood accident. He uses putty bought online to make a temporary bridge and has had to resort to self-help because he can't access the care he needs on the NHS.
At the end of the day, it affects people's day in, day out lives, and this is something that they should be on top of, really. It should be, just as important as every other service on the NHS.
456.
At his dental clinic, Lenda Cruz does offer NHS appointments, but says a lack of investment by the government means he also has to take on private patients.
If I was running a purely NHS practice, I would not have enough money to pay my staff, to manage inflation, to pay for materials. Material costs have gone up dramatically, and to cover investments that I'd like to put into the practice, to put new equipment, new materials, new radiography equipment. It's going to cost me a lot of money to do that.
An NHS spokesperson said the number of appointments available is steadily increasing, but MPs on the Health and Social Care Committee are calling for urgent and fundamental reform of NHS dentistry to end the significant regional variations in dental care that's leaving many patients in pain and distress. Martha Fairley, News at 10.
It was perhaps to be expected that the government would today double down on its determination that the public sector pay deal currently on the table between 5% and 7% is the final offer. But tonight the government is facing the wrath of the nursing unions, who earlier wrote angrily to the Health Secretary Steve Barclay about getting the lowest pay award. Award, I think is the word I'm looking for, Carl. Sorry, it's Friday night. What can I say? Look, last night, in fact, the moment this became clear, we thought this might be a problem, right? But the language used tonight is quite strong.
Yeah, it has become a problem. And on the face of it, the nurses look hard done by. They had accepted 5%. And then yesterday, Rishi Sunak announced awards of 6 to 7% for everyone else. But those headlines do not tell the whole story. And the government will say, well, look, hang on, the nurses got a series of lump sums which take many of them to above inflation pay awards. The trouble is those lump sums for nurses are one-off payments. Some of the other groups, junior doctors, for example, have had lump sums which are consolidated. They're repeating, ongoing. And that means junior doctors are getting like 8 to 10% pay rises. That said, it's far below the 35% that they say that they need to take them back to the level they were at, and they are still on strike today in the middle of their biggest strike ever. Overnight, there was a cheeky tweet from the president of the Australian Medical Association saying that he was looking forward to welcoming many ex-NHS doctors to Australia next year because they'd all be leaving. Now, today, the Prime Minister's spokesman said, look, the issue of doctors emigrating has been overplayed. It doesn't happen as often as many people think it does. But the issue of retention of doctors and others in the NHS is an ongoing problem, and it remains to be seen whether these pay awards will be enough to keep them working for the service.
OK, Carl, thank you very much indeed. Now, the mother of the 19-year-old student stabbed to death in Nottingham last month delivered a poignant eulogy to her son at his funeral today. Hundreds of people attended the funeral in Taunton of Barnaby Webber, who died alongside his friend Grace O'Malley Kumar when they were attacked after a night out. Barnaby's mother, Emma Webber, told mourners of the very long and painful road ahead as his family tried to cope with their loss. His father, David, said he had been a beautiful boy. Now, huge areas of the United States are currently in the grip of a heat wave that is both setting records and threatening health. The extreme heat has taken hold right across the country. On the East Coast in Florida, temperatures have been peaking at 40 degrees in some parts of the state. More centrally, El Paso in Texas hit a high of 42 degrees, and it's recorded 28 days in a row of at least 38 degrees or 100 degrees Fahrenheit, its longest such streak on record. And in California, Death Valley is forecast to hit a temperature of 55 degrees on Sunday. That's 131 degrees Fahrenheit and would be the highest temperature ever reliably recorded on Earth.
Across the United States, temperatures are soaring and are set to intensify, with records being broken and concern mounting about the long-term trend. Nowhere more so than in California, where farm workers are facing blistering temperatures. Death Valley and the community of Furnace Creek are certainly justifying their names. Today it has reached 50 degrees Celsius there, 122 degrees Fahrenheit.
We could see some records broken right here in the state of California. So what I'm about to show everyone, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, understand it, and even feel how hot this is. Look at this, Death Valley.
Perhaps the most alarming issue is not even on land. Sea temperatures off the coast of Florida are rising to abnormal levels, reaching 32 degrees, threatening to bleach vital coral reefs and endangering marine life.
When you have enough corals dying on a reef, it becomes an existential crisis for the coral reef ecosystem itself. So if we lose the coral reef habitat, this essentially means that many species that reside in coral reefs will no longer have a home in the ocean environment. And the fact that, again, we're seeing this heat stress so early in the year, which is so unexpected, is really, really alarming. And as of right now, all we can do is essentially hope and wait that things cool off.
At the same time, in Vermont, in New England, earlier this week, floods were the issue.
Bro, what? Oh, that's car, bro.
Today, President Biden declaring it a federal disaster, allowing the state to access funds from Washington to help restore the infrastructure. So America, like Europe, is in the grip of extreme weather this summer. And scientists are warning, this is just the start. Robert Moore, News at 10, in the United States.
Well, Greece is, of course, one of the southern European countries mentioned by Robert there in the grip of potentially dangerous temperatures. With the Cerberus heat wave pushing the mercury over 40 degrees, the Greek government has actually ordered the suspension of work between midday and 5 p.m. The Acropolis, Greece's most famous attraction, has also been closed to protect tourists. Earlier, one visitor had to be stretchered down by paramedics. More record-breaking temperatures in Italy and Spain, as well as Greece, are expected next week. Back here, the Oscar-winning Hollywood star Kevin Spacey denied in court today that he is a sexual bully who has used his fame and power to make people sleep with him. He was continuing to give evidence at the trial where he's accused of sexual offences against 4 men. The actor was described as the golden boy of the London theatre scene at the time of the allegations. Mr. Spacey denies all the charges against him.
Morning, Kevin. Morning, Kevin.
There wasn't the signature smile and wave of earlier appearances as Kevin Spacey returned for his second day in the witness box, this time facing questions about sexual assault charges he denies. In court, the jury was reminded that 3 out of his 4 accusers mentioned what lawyers referred to today as the crotch grab. Asked if that was something he would normally do to someone he'd just met, Spacey said he objected to the term, denying it was his trademark move. Lawyers then described an alleged incident at the Haymarket Theatre, where it's claimed Spacey grabbed the crotch of one of his accusers while they were alone together for less than a minute. The actor was asked what reason his accuser would have for coming forward, and Spacey replied, money, money, and then money. The court again heard claims that Spacey had assaulted a man as he drove him to a party hosted by Elton John. Spacey claimed the man had been embarrassed because he'd chosen to engage sexually with him. The lawyer asked, "Do you think that you might have misinterpreted what they were doing or saying?" Spacey replied, "If they went further than they wanted, they did not let me know that." She continued, "Have you found that due to your status and position, people normally did what you wanted them to do?" "No," he replied. "You didn't find it easier to pick up people because of who you are?" "I found it harder to trust people because of who I was," he said. The cross-examination became heated and temperamental at times, with the judge on several occasions having to interject and firmly tell Spacey to answer the questions. Some of Spacey's answers in evidence sounded more like one-liners and caused an eruption of laughter from the public gallery. Spacey denies all 12 charges against him, and the trial continues. Carolyn Sim, News at 10, Southwark Crown Court.
Watching crowds cheered today as India successfully launched its own mission to the moon. The spacecraft, named Chandrayaan-3, which is Sanskrit for mooncraft, took off from southern India this morning. Equipped with a lander and rover, the unmanned mission to the moon's south pole is a follow-up to a failed effort 4 years ago. If successful, India would become only the 4th country to land on the moon.
3, 2, 1... 0.
A collective breath was held by a nation's space agency and the millions of Indians watching this rocket begin a much-awaited journey.
5 seconds.
It set off for the surface of the moon. Fueling it are the hopes that it will be the first to land on and collect data from the moon's southern region.
Congratulations, India. Chandrayaan-3 has started its journey towards moon.
After taking off earlier, the rocket will now circle the Earth, and after around 15 to 20 days should reach the moon's orbit, where it could take another 20 days to reach the shadowy surface of the South Pole, with its deep, dark craters and large mountains, an area unexplored but believed to be rich in minerals and water.
The reason why water is so important is potentially a future fuel. So it's a propellant, allows you to travel into space. But also, if we are going to have a human settlement in the future on the surface of the moon, one of those key things that we need is water to survive, whether that's used in mechanical processes or actually purified and for future astronauts to consume. It's a really valuable resource on the surface.
This much-anticipated mission follows India's failed attempt to land a robotic spacecraft on the moon 4 years ago.
Subsequently, the communication from lander to ground station was lost.
So far, today's successor has been successful. The satellite has separated from the launch vehicle. Eventually, scientists will start reducing the rocket's speed to hopefully enable a soft landing. If all goes to plan, the rover will gather data from rocks and craters to help answer the question at the centre of this mission. Could the moon become an extended continent of Earth and host human life? India wants to join China, the US and the former Soviet Union in landing a rover on the moon's surface. but also wants to be the first to do it in its most hostile area.
आज भारत में चंद्रयान के सफल लॉन्च पर
India's Prime Minister called this a new chapter in the country's space odyssey. All eyes now will be watching to see if the Chandrayaan makes it. Ellie Pitt, News at 10.
Today's men's singles at Wimbledon set up a mouth-watering final between the current king of tennis and the young star who wants to knock him off his perch. Novak Djokovic's dominant semi-final victory over Italy's Yannick Sinner gives him the chance to win his 5th consecutive Wimbledon singles title and 8th in all. The world number 2 hasn't been beaten on the grass of SW19 since 2016, but standing in his way will be Spain's young world number 1 and the top seed Carlos Alcaraz. Tributes have been paid today after the death of the much-loved character actor John Nettleton, who brought his very British comic flair to TV classics like Yes, Minister and its sequel, Yes, Prime Minister.
Yes, but now he wants to introduce his next idea. A minister with 2 ideas. I can't remember when we last had.
Never goes out of date. In the famous satirical series, he played the suave and scheming top civil servant, Sir Arnold Robinson. He was 94. Finally, the pop star Rita Ora talked to us today about the battles that have shaped her life. The battle she and her family faced, for instance, when they arrived as refugees in London. She spoke eloquently of the positive impact immigration can have, and the battle she herself recently undertook, just as Taylor Swift did, to win full control of her own music. She was speaking to Nina.
Her journey has certainly been more dramatic than many. As Rita Ora releases her 3rd album, collaborating with one of her idols, Fatboy Slim, on this single, she has cause to feel grateful. Taking to the stage at Glastonbury this year, she was the embodiment of a pop star, in control of the crowd, and now, for the first time, in control of the music she makes. After a long dispute when she tried to leave Jay-Z's music label Rock Nation, which signed her when she was a teenager, and seeing the likes of Taylor Swift fighting for the rights to her back catalogue, Ora has signed a new deal in which she owns the masters, the original recordings of her new music.
I've been in the music industry for a long time, but I've just learnt the power of owning my masters, and you really have to do the research to really understand, you know, the numbers and how and who is looked after in the process of making of your album, you know, everything from songwriters to producers to mixers, everything. And so I really wanted to control that aspect.
What are you hoping to prevent happening by you owning your own masters?
We don't get as much as we should when our songs are getting streamed. And Taylor Swift and everything that all these big artists have been saying, it's real.
With more than 10 billion streams of her music and a record number of top 10 singles, she is also taking this moment and her success to try change the narrative over refugees. Having left Kosovo after the persecution of Albanians like her family in 1991, a country she now visits as a UNICEF ambassador, she says there should be more focus on the positive impact immigrants continue to have.
I've always been very vocal about where I'm from and how lucky I am to be here, and all my dreams came true. I just really like to be an example for anyone that just wants to have that chance that it is possible. Now more than ever, you've got lots of pop stars that come from, you know, refugee immigrant families, Dua Lipa, BB Rexa, and I'm lucky and happy now that there's loads of us to really sort of set the tone. I think it's really interesting to just try and show sympathy and a little bit of empathy on families, especially knowing that they just want to feel safe.
There have been bumps in the road. She was criticised for breaching lockdown rules. But now with a new album and recent marriage, her husband is Oscar-winning filmmaker Taika Waititi, Rita Ora says she feels content and grown up.
It must be really handy to have a director husband when you're making a video, though.
I mean, of course I'm going to put him to work. I was like, come on, get up, it's time to do this. He was like, what are we doing? I'm like, making a music video.
This is the new emboldened Rita Ora. Nina Nanar, News at 10.
And just before we go, how would you feel if you suddenly came across one of these? The Burmese python caught in Florida was 19 feet long. That's as long as a giraffe is tall. And that's a record for Florida, where the Burmese python is hunted as a highly invasive species, damaging to indigenous wildlife. That's it, but in summary, it's too hot to go on holiday in most places, which you won't be able to do anyway because the airports will be in chaos. There'll soon be much less to watch on TV, and there's no point in trying to sit in the garden because it's Britain in the summer, so the forecast is awful. More on that after this. But at least you haven't been eaten by a python. You see, could have been worse. What an uplifting place to end. Have a brilliant weekend. I'll be back here on Monday. Good night. Thank you for watching.
Today, it could be pouring in many places, but